Hey guys, it's Jessie, and I just wanted to do a quick video of my time at FanX. I had planned on going to FanX a few months ago, but I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do it just because of everything that's been going on in my life. But I decided a day trip would be fun and to take my daughter. Will Wheaton was the only last Crusher family member that I needed to meet, and I also just needed his signature to complete my poster. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Here is Will and I at our photo op. One thing about FanX is that they're very, very good and organized when it comes to the photo ops. It's very quick. It's seamless. You go in, take your picture, go around the corner, grab your photo, walk out the door. So I was very excited to get this done. One of the things is that the doors didn't open till 11:30. His photo op was at 12, and then the panel was at 1. So it was just boom, boom, boom. And yeah, it was definitely exciting. And of course, I really wanted to talk about the panel, which, as you can see, these three gentlemen here were having a blast. One of the things is that I've never gotten to see Will on stage before, and so it was really nice for me to be able to witness it because you can genuinely see how much these castmates just absolutely adore and love each other. One thing that I did take away from the panel was that Will was talking about how much he loved everybody, right? And how his time on Star Trek means so much to him. And of course, he just mentioned a little bit about his family where he was just like, I grew up with four strangers. And that's why the cast is his family. And he even talked about, how he is grateful for so many things. He says every time he goes to bed at night, he just lists everything that he's grateful for. And also he was talking about, the difference between nice and kindness. And he's like, nice is up here, but kindness comes from here. And it was interesting as I'm listening to him say this, my whole thing about Crusher Convo was to deep dive episodes and topics through the eyes of Beverly Crusher, because I believe that Beverly represents the best of Star Trek. And it's the same with Wesley Crusher, and it's the same about how Gates approaches it and how Will approaches it. Both are just compassionate, they're kind, they have, they fight for a better future and have hope. And it's so good to see that with the actors and embody that into their characters. I mean, this is why I love the Crusher family. It just showcases the greatness that Star Trek really is. And so it was kind of an honor to witness this and to see Will up there. And of course, they had mentioned, and I kind of forgot that today is the anniversary of Star Trek The Next Generation, 37 years. And you could see that of just how much they were interacting with each other. Jonathan at one point called Will his son, and they were just having a blast. And they were talking about their other castmates and how much they adore him. So yeah, it was a really good panel. So after the panel, it was time to go talk to Will and get my poster signed. Now, as I had mentioned before, it was pretty straightforward. Like doors open 11:30, had the photo up, had the panel. So I got to his line at about 2 o'clock, but there was some people who were we call them the sticky note people. So that means if you were in line before and the actor or whoever you're going to meet is not there, you get a sticky note to save your place. Okay. And so there was people who had sticky notes. So they got to go first. Then there's some VIPs, and then there's the general admission, which was us. And of course, they do 2 VIPs, 1 general, just to kind of get the line going a little bit. Well, I was getting a little worried because it started to get a little bit longer and we were going to be driving back. Like I said, this was a day trip. Maddie and I arrived Thursday night and slept, woke up, checked out, went to FanX, did our thing, and then we were going to drive back home. So I started to get a little worried because at 4:30 they had the group photo op and it was starting to push 3:30. Luckily, I was in the perfect place in line because right at about 3:45, almost 4, I was able to meet Will. The first thing that I told him was, one, it is an honor to meet you. And, he just had this big grin on his face. And I told him, I was like, I have a podcast called Crusher Convo because I just believe that the Crusher family really represents Star Trek. And I said, but I drove 5 hours here to get my poster signed. And I said, and I have a gift for you. I did mention to him though that because Maddie doesn't, really get involved in Star Trek and stuff, but she thought it was cool that I was giving him a gift, and it was a Crusher Combo mug, and it was the same one that I gave Ed. And so she decided to decorate his bag. So she picked up the color, she did the bow, she decided to get him a little ghost plushy keychain, threw it in there. So I let him know that. I was like, just so you know, the mug is from me. I said, but everything else my daughter did, and so was the plushie. And he was very grateful for that. But yeah, I was just stoked to meet him. And I told him about the poster. I said, I've met every one of your your space family. I was like, except for you, and I'm very happy to meet you. And so I pull it out, and this is when I decide to tell him about that Brent and Jonathan story about the Pulaski photo, where Brent was like, Gates should sign it. Jonathan said it was too soon. It was a whole thing. So I tell him this, and he busts out laughing. He's like, oh my gosh. He's like, they are just the greatest. He was just so stoked. And he was just like, I just love that we have such a dark sense of humor. And I think Jonathan kind of peeked over because he's right next to Will, and he kind of peeked over. And I was just all like, yeah, I told him about everything that had happened. I was like, but I was like, if I do get Gates to sign it, it's going to say Mrs. Brent Spiner. Because one, Brent said that she should sign it. And two, this is a story a long time ago when when Brent was coming out with his book fan fiction, Gates was with him talking about it, and she had said this story about how the flight attendant was getting all their autographs, and Brent was like, oh, don't forget her. And she's like, oh, here you go, Mrs. Spiner. She had no idea who Gates was, so Gates signed it Mrs. Spiner. So I thought that would be funny. Not my idea. I think it was either Susan or Paula. Someone had told me about it. Good idea. If I do it, I'll give you credit. But yeah, he just thought it was the greatest. And I was like, well, this is why we love your space family. This is why we love the next generation. I said, because every one of you guys is awesome. And he just smiled and he thanked me. And yeah, it was just a really great experience. And then it was time to go home. But before all of that went down, because we were waiting between the photo op and the panel, I found out that Lenore Zann, who plays Rogue from X-Men, was there. And so I had to meet her. So here it is. I was super excited. The first thing that I told her, I was like, my 9-year-old self is so giddy. She was very lovely. And one of the greatest things about Lenore is that she asks you questions. She wants to get to know you. As much as she's grateful to hear why we love her, why we love her character, she starts asking you questions. And this is where things got a little interesting and where the poster comes into play. So, like I said, she is asking me questions, and she noticed my Crusher Combo shirt, and she's like, oh, what is that? And I had said, I was like, oh, I have a podcast, the Star Trek podcast, explained to her about Beverly, real quick. I didn't want to make that our whole conversation. And then I decided I just bought a photo. I was just going to do a selfie. I didn't really bring a lot of cash with me. And so we were just going to take the photo. Well, she saw the back of my phone, which is this. And she thought it was Rogue. And she even said, she was like, oh, it looks like you have a Rogue picture on the back of that. I was like, funny you say that, but it's not. I was like, that's Beverly Crusher. And she's like, she looks like Rogue. And I was like, I know. Gave her a snippet of where, Xavier goes to future Rogue to help stop Apocalypse or something like that, because that's what the shot looked like, because Gates had the white. And she was all like, yeah, she totally could play her in X-Men. And I had told her, I was all like, well, my worlds already collided. I was like, because Gates is on the show. And she's like, she is? And I was like, yeah. I was like, at the very, very end, Mother Ascani comes to play. And she's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Who's Mother Ascani? I was like, okay. So she's asking me all these questions. And so I tell her, I was like, that's the future child of Jean Grey and Scott. I was like, there's a whole timeline thing. I gave her the whole rundown. I was like, but Gates voiced this character. And she was like, oh, that's really interesting. I was like, yeah. So I said, my worlds collided. I was super stoked. Talked about it on the podcast. I said, because it was just an amazing thing to happen. And she's like, well, I already taped season 2. She's like, I think you're really going to enjoy it. And I was like, oh, awesome. I was like, but no spoilers. I was like, but I'm super excited to see it. And because I gave her the whole rundown about Mother Ascani and, the whole story and then, why I do the podcast, she just kind of looked at me. She's like, "Can I gift you a poster?" And I'm all, "Sure." And she's all like, "I really enjoyed our conversation." She's like, "I loved everything you just told me." She's like, "I think that's super cool." She's like, "I really want to gift you this." And I was like, "Okay." Um, that was amazing. I was not expecting that. And so the poster, here it is. And it says freedom. And of course, it says down here, "I choose my own power." It has the Captain America logo. And it says here, "Hey, Jesse, sugar, there's a little rogue in all of us." And I was honored that she did that. And she told me there was an artist who had seen her wear that jacket with her earrings and he got inspired. And so he drew that up for her. And so now she's selling it on her table. But she wanted to give that to me because she was just like, "I think what you're doing sounds great." She's like, "This character," she's like, "And what was her name again?" I was like, "Gates McFadden." I was like, and she's like, she's like, "I've never met her." She's like, "But I should definitely look her up. She seems pretty cool." I was like, "She really is." So I just, the whole thing was an outer body experience. Again, worlds colliding. It was absolutely amazing. And she gave that to me and I was so honored. I was so honored. And it's really funny. Quick thought here. Um, we don't know what season 2 is about. Apparently they've already taped it. Have no idea what's going on, but if Gates is in season 2 like we think she is going to be, she might be at Comic-Con next year, San Diego. That would be very cool because here's Gates just growing from the Star Trek franchise into something else, and I think it's just absolutely amazing, and I love that for her. Wanted to throw that out there. But anyway, so yeah, it was so cool. I even remember when I turned around and I went to my daughter and I gave her this wide-eyed look. She's like, "Did she just give that to you?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "That's kind of awesome." I was like, "I know." Maddie doesn't get excited about anything. And so she was pretty impressed by mom at that very moment. So, anyways, so yeah, it was definitely a great experience meeting Will, meeting Lenore, just, it was just so much fun. And as much as I am trying to stay awake because I'm exhausted, I came in home pretty late last night. It was well worth it. And I want to thank Will Wheaton. You are amazing. I absolutely adore you. I'm so happy for you. You are an inspiration to so many. And I just loved how open and honest you are. And that is something that I think we all can take and learn from. And Lenore, you are also the best. You are super sweet. And thank you for being as kind and as amazing as you are. So, yeah, that was my experience at FanX. I really wanted to share that with you guys. But real quick, I did want to just do a couple of little announcements because don't forget next week is the Women of Star Trek for Kamala Harris. That is October 3rd, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is a video call. If you have not registered yet, just go to womenofstartrek.com. Also, guys, when I return back to the live seat, I will be discussing Nana Visitor's new book, Star Trek Open a Channel, A Women's Trek, a react and review on Beverly Crusher Day 2024. I thought it was pretty fitting to discuss this book on Beverly Crusher Day because you know how I feel about the women of Star Trek. They are awesome. And right after that, I will be doing my own react and review of Lower Decks, the final season. So if you want to be a guest during my react and review, there is an episode form that I have out. Just pick the episode you want and you could be my guest for that day. This is starting October 25th. So the episode comes out on that Thursday and I will go live that Friday. So I will be doing that whole rest of season 2 of Crusher Convo. The Lower Decks finale will wrap it up for me. And don't forget, guys, buy a Crusher Combo merch at TeePublic. You can listen to me on Apple, Spotify, or Good Pods, or wherever you love to listen to your podcast. You can like and subscribe on YouTube. You could be a Patreon member. You can buy me a coffee, or you can follow me on Threads and Instagram. All this information is at crusherconvo.com. And I do want to give a shout out to Engineer Mark, who is my Admiral Patreon member. So thank you, Mark, for your support. And anyways, guys, this was loads of fun. If you have any questions, just hit me up on the socials, and can't wait to see you on Beverly Crusher Day. All right, guys, live long and prosper.
Crusher out.